organize to speak with an organizer today.
KCAA.
Welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, created and hosted by Scott Knudsen, to explore the crossroads of horses and business. Now here's your host, Scott Knudsen.
Hi, and welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. I'm your host, Scott Knudsen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Whether you're watching our podcast on one of our many platforms or listening to us on the radio in California on KCAA, the NBC affiliate, we want to thank you so much for listening and watching the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. Today, we have part two with a very special guest, Dr. Harry Anderson, PhD, founder of Total Feeds and Total Human. Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson, for being on the show.
It's great to be here. I enjoy these things.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what, it was such a success on the first part. I appreciate you coming back. There was so many questions I wanted to ask you. We just didn't get time enough to do.
Okay, well, I hope I've got enough answers.
Well, I bet so. So we're going to ask a few more questions from part one, and then we'll kind of move into part two. So part one. So growing up, you said you grew up in a one-room house with a dirt floor. Would you mind
I was born there and I spent my first 2 years in a one-room house.
Oh my goodness!
It did have a wood floor, but that's about all.
Wood floor. Oh my goodness! What I know. At 2 years old, you don't remember probably a lot, but do you remember any stories about what it was like growing up in a one-room house in a rural environment?
Well, we were kind of different. My parents all grew up in multi-room houses. However, one of my grandmothers was born in a sod house in North Dakota in the 1890s. So we go back to the same thing. We both started out the same. She lived to be 80-some years old, so I guess it worked.
Oh, my goodness. As cold as it gets up there, or what I think it gets cold, I don't know, man. It's tough. Just a tough deal.
Well, yeah, I can get cold. The coldest I've ever been out in to work is minus 55 with a minus 95 wind chill.
Oh, my goodness.
That'll set you on your ear and make you move real quick.
The chores get done quick. Oh, my goodness. So
you can't be outside. Nothing can.
No, that's tough. So how do you go from that to a PhD? I mean, that's such a tall leap in just a few years.
Well, it was simply by accident. As I went through my education, I had no visions, I had no goals or anything, but these things kept popping up in front of me, that opportunities that I just staggered into, and finally ended up in graduate school and earned a PhD in nutrition and several minors in biochemistry and physiology and pharmacology.
Oh my goodness.
So I got a nice, well-rounded education almost by accident. And I'd like people to know that when I graduated from graduate school, when I got my PhD, I had a son and a wife, and I owed $3,500 in the world. We worked hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you say it's by accident. How do you have the discernment? Because in part one, we were talking about how you went to school, it was by accident. How you worked for corporate, it was accident. Entrepreneur by accident. How do you have the discernment to recognize this is an opportunity I need to focus on? Because there's so many people right now, maybe listening or watching, like, how does he know when to do it, to do what they believe is right, to have that discernment?
Well, I don't know if I can give you a very defined answer on that, but it just seemed to be that the things that people were doing at that time kept popping up and giving me the opportunity to do those things. And I did have a sister that 1 year older than me, and she went to college, so I figured I better go to college. and she got a master's degree. So I figured, hey, she's just a girl. I can outdo her. So I go for a PhD without getting them. Oh, by the way, there's an interesting little wrinkle there too, because when you go to graduate school and want to get a PhD, you go and you get the first 2 years, you work, basically you're a slave for the department doing little work and stuff and teaching and research and things. And then they get you to do a master's degree. And I got to looking and I said, I'm in a hurry here. So I went into my advisor and I said, I don't want to get a master's. I just want to go straight to a PhD. Oh, he said, we've never done that before. I said, well, I think we need to do it. And after about a 30-minute discussion, he said, okay, we'll try it with you. And we did. I went through without a master's, just went straight to the PhD, and they've never done it since. I guess
you've always been a
work.
salesman.
Yes. I can be rather persuasive.
I love it. I love it. The only one in history. So when you went from that and you did some jobs and you got in the corporate environment, and I know in part one you were talking about, it was just an accident. It's just something that happened. But how does something like that happen? Or how can somebody recognize, here's an opportunity, I better take it? Because these opportunities are rare.
Well, in my case, it boiled down to money, really. I was at the University of Wyoming for the first 3 years out of school. And even though I got the biggest raises in the Department of Agriculture, for some reason, they gave me bigger raises. But I was, now in today's terms, it wouldn't mean much, but I was clear up to $12,000 a year. And a feed company came along and offered me a 50% increase in pay. I couldn't say no. I had 2 sons by that time, and my wife, Margaret, was not working anymore. I wanted her to raise the boys, and so I needed the money.
Absolutely.
And so it kind of pushed me into it, and I'm glad it did. I'll never look back. I cherish those experiences. Each one of the things I did afterwards all have dovetailed into what I'm doing today. Everything I ever did along the way is part of what makes me successful, if I can call myself successful, today in this environment. So
I love that.
It was luck. Somebody was watching out for me and kept directing me, and throwing things down in front of me.
But you had the fortitude to take it and do it, pick them up and just run with it at a very high level.
Yeah. I started to realize later in my education and stuff, I started to realize the importance of looking for opportunities.
Right.
And not
Absolutely.
just, flipping them by and walking by them. But I like to do new things. Mm-hmm. Always have. Some people say I don't focus very well, that I'm always changing what I'm doing. And in this case, through my lifetime, that's been good for many things. Sometimes it's not so great, but it has been good because I no matter what path I'm on, I'm always taking those rabbit trails. I took a lot of them on the last show we did, on the little rabbit trails and talking about different things. That's the way my mind works.
Well, I love that. I think that's the only way you find more opportunity. If you just keep going down the straight road, you're going to see just a few. And I love how all the roads came back to what you're doing now. And there's a clear pattern. I love that. So what made you in your mind go from your mindset change from working for a corporation to being an entrepreneur?
Well, that was, again, almost forced into it almost by accident, because in the consulting world, the consultant is charged with taking care of the customer and doing the best thing for the customer. And I don't want to get into anything that I shouldn't say here, but it got to the point where I was being criticized for doing things for my feedlot customers that were working great and very successful, but they had not been sanctioned by or researched by the company I was working for. And I got chastised for that, to the point where one day I said, can't do this. My customers first. I don't care about the paycheck anymore. And that's when I walked away and became my own boss. Of course, they never could boss me, but they discovered that early on. I don't boss well. And so we parted company. I hung out my shingle in the year 1989 and became a private consulting nutritionist for basically the feedlot industry more than anything. I was consulting with the big mega yards, those from, say, 15 or 20,000 up to over 100,000 head at a time. And so I had enough business that wanted to stay with me when we parted company. So I had a good business base. And then over time, and here again, it's my concentration. I was doing so many things during that time, trying to show the world how flexible I was, I guess. I was doing training seminars for personality, public. I would analyze people and do public seminars, and that is part of the importance of what we're talking about today, to show them how they make decisions, how they think, how they communicate, and how they differ from other people. And I probably tested way over 4,000 people in the few years I did that. And so then I use all of that expertise that I've gained from that in dealing with other people on how to communicate and how to get someone to see ideas. We all see them different.
Right.
Some groups, you have to show them a nice picture, right in front of them, or they don't see it. Others, I can explain it, I can describe it, and they draw their own picture in their mind. And you have to know which is which, because you can offend either one of them real quick. So I learned how not to do that. So that was one of my sidelines. One of my other sidelines was I did feedlot and nutritional training seminars for feedlot employees, feed companies. I actually had feed company nutritionists come to my seminars, and veterinarians would come to my seminars. And I got this, all of a sudden, this big head, I said, wow, this could be good. Well, that runs out. You can only do that so long or so many. But that taught me a lot about what the industry was thinking. Mm-hmm. Very important to have that feedback of what competitors and so on were thinking. And so that was giving me a vision. This is where the vision comes from. And that's one of when I talk to young people about being an entrepreneur, the first item is you have to have a vision of something.
Love it.
You even though you don't have goals, you have to have a vision that can make you excited. And that was where that was all developing over those years that I was doing that. And then I was involved with several, and I learned some things from other companies, not feed companies or anything, but one of the stories I wanted to tell today is that kind of, I think, sums it all up. In about 30 years ago, there was somebody came to me. He was a retired pharmacology person in a pharmaceutical company, and he had this great idea. He had the idea of the animal behavior modifier. Nobody's heard of that because it went by the wayside, but it was a tail pinch phenomenon. He knew that if you squeeze the spinal column of an animal, pressure it, release, pressure, release, pressure, release, it releases endorphins in the brain. And it also releases insulin into the body. Wow. I don't know why it does that, but I know it does. And he had this apparatus that you would put on a cow's tail, and it would automatically, it'd do that. But think about this. Have you ever thought about how you would hold something on the tail of a cow?
Mm-hmm.
They're shaped the wrong way.
They are.
They get smaller as they go down, right?
Right.
So what do you anchor to? We ended up with harnesses on them and everything else. But where I'm headed with this story, even though it was highly successful, I could take this apparatus and I could make a cow or a horse, either one, and I could still do it. I can put that on, and I don't care if they just ate everything they wanted. I can make them eat again. It's that strong a desire. You can use it on humans too, but nobody wants to do that.
No.
But the point I want to make is that this gentleman had no idea of how to start a company. So what he did, he gathered money from all his friends and family and everything, and he ended up with about $12 million that he gathered up. So he goes out and he does all this research at $200,000-$300,000 a pop, and he did a whole bunch of trials, and he traveled all over the world telling about this thing, and he hired some people, and he hired me as a consultant, and on and on. He ended up burning $12 million before he sold anything.
Oh no!
Down the tubes, gone. I worked with another outfit that came to me. People would come to me, see, because they knew I could sell, so they come to me to help them promote. Another guy came with a bolus. It was a metal bolus about that big that you would drop. Well, it's like for hardware disease. Mm-hmm. You put a bolus down there. It gets into the reticulum, and it lays there and it collects. This one would do the same thing, but this magnetic bolus had a sensor in it that you could read body temperature from the outside.
Wow.
And so theoretically, you could walk animals through the chute and you could pick out the ones that have an elevated temp. And it was great technology. Spent all his money, never sold one. And so it went by the wayside. And I thought to myself, when I started this company, I said, one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to spend ahead. And that's what they do. And that's what a lot of these startup companies do. They spend ahead, and they use their capital before they sell the product. Mm-hmm. And that can't be done.
Right. Because
I made a kind of a list of things today that a sequence of events that people should look at and follow this sequence, if they would just do that instead of getting way ahead of themselves like most people do. Our first impulse is to run out and advertise, right?
Sure. Of course.
That's not what you do first.
Right.
You sell something, small quantities, and generate some capital. Because I've talked about the passion you have to have. You have to have a vision. You have to have a passion. Right. And then you need to figure out your skill set for what you want to do, where you think you're going to go. It doesn't matter where you're going or what you're going to do. You better think about your skill set. Can you sell? Do you have the background knowledge for it? And things like that. If you don't, you better go find those first. And you do those, you get the company to pay for it, right?
Absolutely.
You learn by working for a company.
Absolutely.
And while you're working for that company, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you can be developing these ideas as you go along, but let them educate you, train you, and so on. And I shouldn't say that. That's maybe not a nice thing to look at it, but that's what people have been doing for my lifetime.
Absolutely.
That's where a lot of these good companies come from.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're doing the work and they're giving you a check, that's a fair trade. If you happen to learn something along the way and you apply it down the road, that's fair. And I think it's a great way to learn. That's a great way to learn.
You're not taking anything from the company. You gave them what they paid for.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's one of the things that they have to have some backing on that. And then they need to have adequate financial sources available. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have all the money to get started. You just have to have them so you can kind of reach out when you need some, or have someone that will back you, or you accumulate enough money to get just a grub stake. They used to call it a grub stake. Well, that's still what it is. And then once you do that, you look at your market. What is the market you're wanting to go after? Is there a need for something different? Is there a need for something new? Because, Scott, along the way, every time I've changed to doing something different, I have brought some new thinking and technology to that industry.
Absolutely.
Like the horse industry.
Right.
And I did it to the feedlot industry. I did it to all this stuff.
Scott will be right back with more.
Hi, I'm Scott Knudsen, host of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, heard on KCAA Fridays, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'd like to talk to you about something I'm very passionate about. Those that know me know I love my coffee. In the morning, afternoon, and even late in the evening, I enjoy a good cup of coffee almost any time of the day. Now, my team at the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show has been working for several months on creating and introducing our own brand of coffee. We wanted to make sure that we got it just right. We don't want to put our name on anything unless we're 100% certain that it's the best product available, and we've finally done it. We have created a wonderful line of coffees, 13 fantastic flavors offered in whole bean, ground, and K-cups. Any way you like to brew your coffee. Now, each of our coffees carries our brand, the very same brand that we put on our horses, our trailers, and our chaps. So you know that this is a quality product. And we only use 100% Arabica beans, the very best beans available. Just listen to some of these wonderful blends and flavors. Jamaican Me Crazy, Honduran San Marcos, Chocolate Cherry Amaretto, Breakfast Blend, and my very favorite, Haley's Blend. A coffee so good, we named it after my daughter. You can order these coffees today by going online to javacowboy.com. That's javacowboy.com. And if you order today, you can get an extra 10% off your final purchase just by entering the promo code COWBOY on checkout. Remember, that's promo code COWBOY for an extra 10% off. Just go to javacowboy.com to order your coffee today.
Total Equine.
Total Bull.
Total Canine.
Total Goat.
Total People Plus.
Total Feeds. Unparalleled excellence in nutrition.
One of the things that I brought to this party is that you can feed a horse with no hay or grass.
Mm-hmm.
Ask any nutritionist worth his salt out there how to start developing an equine diet. The rule is you feed 1.5% of body weight as long-stemmed hay to keep that gut working. And if you don't, they're going to get ulcers, they're going to colic, there's a myriad of things that's going to happen to that horse before they die. Right. And you're going to kill them. Well, we changed that paradigm in this one, and this was probably the biggest change I've made along the way, is that we proved you can feed a horse out of a feed bag that has grain in it, that has hardly any fiber in it, and you feed about a third or a fourth of what you would feed if you're feeding nothing but hay of the volume, and they do phenomenally well. Horse has never been hurt. So that's the kind of thing you need to think about. What does that market need that's different, that could be unique?
Right.
Don't go into a market unless you have something unique.
Yeah, no, don't copycat. You got to improve.
The same as everybody else. What are you going to do? Sell it cheap?
Yeah, you'll go broke doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, it'll go along for a little while, but you only last so long.
Yeah, that's right.
And then when you start, here's what I think is a real important point. When you start, you make a small quantity of whatever you're doing,
mm-hmm.
and then you go out and sell it. And you don't come home till you sell it. And you sell it, and you make a little money. Now you go make some more, but you have that little profit. Now you can do a little advertising or promotion.
Right.
And then you get some more, a bigger quantity, and you sell it. You come home and you spend some more on advertising. You don't spend what your base money was on advertising before you sell. I've watched that happen, like I described. I've watched that happen too many times. So you use that profit, and you spend that profit. Now you have to skimp a little on your keeping the profit for yourself for a while. That's all right. Suffer a little early on for long-term gain.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the old saying.
Absolutely.
And then as you grow, you just get more operating money and more sales, and it starts to mushroom. We started the first year I quit consulting. We had about $500,000 in sales. I thought, wow, that's good. But on $500,000, within the feed business, you don't make a lot of profit because it's mostly